G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. Today we are going to go through the forward premiums, all the top dogs in our forward line, and discussing the best options for your fantasy team. Let's go!
Hodge has done it from nowhere. Hoisted the goal from inside the 30. Sheed from the boundary. Dusty.
The legend becomes immortal.
G'day and welcome again to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at Ball Boys. And I'm joined once again by the reigning, or not reigning, but was it 2016 Goal of the Year winner for the NEFL competition, Luke Rogerson. How are you, mate?
Someone did some serious digging on YouTube, didn't they? They found as many moons ago, bit of fucking carry on afterwards,
I'm 100% positive that was you. That was you commenting on that.
It was my burner account. You got me.
Guilty.
You got me. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah. Oh, the glory days.
I'll tell you, a bit of carry on. The fucking chest was puffed out. The chin was erect. Like it was, yeah, a bit of carry on.
Next time you got to introduce me as the 2007
under 10s ruckman
12s player of the finals.
What AFL game?
All right. Well, today, guys, we are going to be going through a big podcast. We're going to be talking about all the best forwards, the forwards that are going to be in our premiums, the players that we are the most confident in that are going to score big this season, zero doubts. And we're going to go through all those players. All right, that was a good podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week. We're talking about rucks. But no, seriously.
That was good, mate.
Seriously,
Love
though.
the bit.
What a shit forward line we have this season. Cast your mind 12 months ago.
Yeah. Spoiled for choice.
Forward line that we had back then, night and day to 2024.
Yeah, well, last year it picked itself, didn't it?
Yeah, well, we could have started as many as five forwards, and some people were putting forwards in their midfield.
This year, I
want to just cut the position.
I looked at the spreadsheet you did up with the list of names we're going to discuss today. I was like, I don't know if there's any that I really want to pick.
Yeah. There's a few names that I've put on there that I've just gone, really? I'm putting them on the list as the premium options we've got here. So we'll see. I think both today's podcast and the next podcast that we do, which is going to be the mid-prices, I don't know if we're going to walk away with this is a guy that we've got to pick. He's in our side. But it's more, for the most part, this line more than any line is going to be, here are some names to watch. And there might be other names that we don't discuss that might come out of left field that I'm going to be very open to. And if the role is there, if things look good and they catch my eye, I think in this forward line in particular this season, I think we've got to be open to a lot of different possibilities. So by no means am I setting these players in stone in terms of these are the guys in my forward line, shutter mode, and I'm leaving everything else off the table. It's just sort of all right, well, here are some of the options that we might be considering, but there also might be plenty of other things that happen in the preseason.
It makes it kind of exciting when there's no definitive way to go, doesn't it? Because I mean, last year a lot of, I won't say everyone, but a lot of people started with very similar forward lines. Yeah. This year it could be different. So.
Imagine if last year you were the only person that picked Errol Goulden, but no, we all saw that preseason game, and then we all had him, and he was as good as he was. It is a bit more exciting when there's a bit more diversity in the picks. So. Let's start at the top, and I feel like for most people, this guy might be a bit more one of these ones.
No question about it. I am ready to get hurt again.
Jack Macrae and the Bevo experience, I'm going to call this one.
And it's an experience.
It is an experience. So Jackson Macrae, I think this is going to be one of the ones we'll spend the most amount of time talking about today because he is the highest averaging forward in our forward line. He is the player that, of all the players, has the highest proven ceiling in his history so far. He's 29. He hasn't crossed over that 30-year-old barrier just yet.
The barrier, that's what you call it.
And a lot of people are, pointing towards Bailey Smith injured for the season. That's got to be good for Macrae. But, I think you and I are both on the same page that we're not going to dismiss Jack Macrae, but he's also not like a lock in our side. Would you say that's the case for you? Or?
Yeah, at the moment at the Oxlongs, he's been doing that snooping in the change rooms. He hasn't quite made it onto the track. He's peeping through the cubicles and whatnot. But The thing is...
I think there needs to be an inquiry over at the Oxlongs and the...
Yeah, the club culture is a little spicy, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with me. I don't know. I mean, I didn't particularly think that I wanted to pick Macrae off the top, but the vanilla aspect of it now, a lot of people have got him locked in. Is there something to be said for going, hey, maybe I don't have full confidence in this guy, but he's picked by a lot of teams, so you just get on and there's safety there? What do you think to that argument?
There's something to that, and we've talked about vanilla being a very, very lovely flavour, especially when it comes to AFL Fantasy, and there's something to the fact that a guy with his ceiling, if you don't start him and he does go big and return back to what he's capable of, then you could be left in the dust. And if he... Look, I don't know if I see him getting much worse. I mean, that would be the only thing that would hurt you by picking him and being disappointed that if he goes worse, or there was someone that you... The other thing is like, okay, is there someone else you could have picked?
That's, I think,
and that's where the struggle is, that right now there's no clear, obvious answer to say, yes, there is someone else that if I don't spend money on Jack Macrae, I'm going to go here. Now, it might be other lines. It might be the fact that maybe we just have a cheap forward line this year and we bolster up our midfield, we bolster up our defence, or whatever it is. But that's going to be a very much... I think team structures are going to very much dependent on this forward line and what kind of presents itself. So I still think that he's definitely an option, a decent option.
Yeah.
At the moment, he's sitting in my team. I have no conviction that he's going to stay there for the rest of the team. I'm open to other players coming in and for me to go cheaper. But like, this is the cheapest he's ever been since his rookie season. He's not been this cheap since 2013, over 10 years ago. Every other season, bar 2016, he's averaged over 100. So if he averages over 100, there's 8 points of upside. The role is the big thing. And is he declining? Is he just getting worse?
I mean, he could be. I don't quite know if I buy the argument of Bailey Smith out that, directly increases Macrae's. Like, having a look at his numbers there was sort of a 4-game patch in the middle of the season where he actually scored all right. I think he even went over 120 a couple of times in that little patch. But it didn't necessarily correlate with a run of huge CBAs, and he was sort of in the back half of the year, he's kind of in and out of the midfield. He's got CBAs up towards the 60%, but then he's got CBAs down at the 20%. And even in games where Bailey Smith had very, very few CBAs and Macrae did, there wasn't necessarily that huge scoring that we've come accustomed from a guy like him. So I don't particularly know if I buy into that so much. The other thing you mentioned before, he might not decline, but if he averages what he averaged last year, that's a loss because, like you said, it's the opportunity of being able to pick somebody pop.
Well,
you've got to find value, don't you?
You do. If I dare say, I mean, we don't know any DPPs or anything like that might come after round 6 this year, but if he averages what he's priced at, he's still probably a top 6 forward. Like that.
But isn't that like get on him at upgrade season so that you can get the value guys earlier?
It probably is, and I'm not saying it's a win, but I also don't think it's a huge loss if there's not a huge opportunity loss. And that's the thing that I think this is going to boil down to is like if there's a guy there that you could have had instead of him and it performs, it outperforms. If there's not, then you might as well start with the guys who are going to finish in the top 6. You save yourself a trade. And he's there. He doesn't have an early buy. He has some ceiling. So it's not all doom and gloom if he just averages what he's priced at. Okay. As long as there's not those other options that you missed out on, I think is the main thing.
I guess come round 1, if the general consensus is that a really high percentage of people own him, the worst case scenario thing is that you don't own him and he goes off. Yeah. But if you jump on and everyone owns him, I guess there's some safety if he does just become one of those top 6 forwards, but just kind of keeps churning out sort of 90, mid-90s. So
I will also say, like, what I said just now is, like, that is not just confined to the forward line as well. So by you going down from Macrae to someone cheaper in the forward line, you might be able to go up higher on a midfielder or something like that and you get a guy, and that cash can be used in other different areas.
See, that interests me.
Don't just confine yourself to there's no other good choices in the forward line. Remember, your team is one big old mesh pot of cash, and if you can distribute that cash somewhere else, you might be able to get someone else that's of better value.
The other thing about Macrae is the thirst factor.
The thirst factor, yeah, the head tilt.
It's like, so guys like Goulden go to the wing and go, righto, I'm going to go 140. Macrae goes to the wing and his head's basically tilting into the ground.
Did you see the photo? I think he had a wedding this off season, and I think Warney or someone tweeted it out, and he
got married.
Yeah, he got married.
Oh.
I think he had a bit of a head tilt going on. It wasn't a sulky head tilt, mind you, but I wanted to know if Bevo was invited. Was Bevo invited? Are they on good terms? Like, what's the go there?
That's interesting.
No reports as of just yet. So if you guys were there or have some inside information, let me know if Bevo was invited to Macrae's wedding, because I reckon they'll give us some insight. But I will say, if we took the games, and I've done this for Jack Macrae, for every game he played over 50%, I've used that to get an average. He averaged 103 points in games where he played over 50%.
Okay.
And there was a lot of hot debate, I'm going to call it, in the AFL Fantasy Twitter community about, Macrae and his CBAs and correlation, causation, whatever. I believe that if he is playing more in the middle, he is going to score better. Now,
probably from a mental perspective, it's probably
I think just a confidence thing. I think the great man Selby pointed that out, and he believes that's a big thing, and that's where he's played his best footy, so that's where he's comfortable.
Well, there's sort of 10
and
they're points of upside.
They're a repeat stoppage kind of team, lots of like hit outs and things like that. So I think that's going to help his ceiling. I don't expect him to return to like a 110 or anything like that. It's more, at best, it's like a 103, 104. At worst, 90. And I think he's somewhere within that range.
I'm so torn. I'm thinking safety in numbers. I'm like a fucking wildebeest, and I'm right in the middle.
The last thing, which I'll leave on before we move on to the next few players, because there is a few players that don't have this, but he has no early buy as well. He's a guy that has the one buy round. His buy round is in, where is it in? It's in round 15, so the very last buy round, which coincides with a lot of other decent fantasy teams as well.
I bet you're going to put him on the chopping block before round 15. You're going to be so fucking frustrated.
So, yeah, just something to keep in mind as well. Obviously, if you're choosing between him and someone else and it's close, but that other player has the early buy, lots to consider here with Jack Macrae. But I don't think we're going to give him... I don't think for a lot of these forwards we're going to give a thumbs up, thumbs down, but it's just an evolving conversation.
Okay. But he's at Mitchman at the moment.
He's at Mitchman at the moment.
Well, that means you have to play the sound effect.
All right, I'll give him one of these ones.
Wow, it's very nice.
It's very nice.
The sound effects are not indicative of what we feel.
Yes, so let's move on to the next guy, who I believe, of all the players in the forward line, clearly has the highest ceiling. And that is Flanders. Sam Flanders of the Gold Coast Suns, who... basically, I think from memory, won me the Content Creators Cup last year, because I don't believe Tim Guest had him, and he had that massive score, the final game or the final round of the year.
I'm glad I traded him out for Zebra with 2.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know if I traded him out. I just picked Zebra instead of him.
You went somewhere else.
Big wins.
Massive finish to the season last year, and it didn't even really coincide with huge CBA numbers. I mean, there was definitely an uptick, but he also played very much that high half forward role. So it seems just to be a guy that finds the ball.
Oh, man.
And has definitely that thirst about him. Round 3 bye, however. What are your thoughts on Flanders as an option this season?
Well, he is. He's just a proven scorer. Like, even at state league level, his numbers were absolutely insane. And I think there's something to be said for that, whether a guy translates into the AFL system in the particular role that the coach wants.
Yeah.
That can be up and down. But guys who find the pill, they find the pill.
Yeah.
So that... for me, is the big question mark is how does he fit in the Gold Coast structure? And Mitch said it before, but with all these guys, there's so many, ifs, ands, or buts, especially buy rounds, new coaches, new systems, injuries. All of these forwards have something going on, I think, that we have to be looking out for. But for me, if Flanders is in the role that he was at the end of last year and in the role that we perhaps expect him to be under Dimmer, I think there'd have to be something else go wrong for me not to just cop that early buy and start him.
So let's talk about the Gold Coast midfield. You're going to have Macrae in there, locked in. I think you're going to have Noah Anderson in there, locked in. Is Flanders the next guy? Is the next guy Tuke Miller? Or is Swallow in there at all? How much is the Humper in there? There's a few guys that could run through there. I'd guess that Gold Coast fans would agree with me. I think David Swallow needs to make way. I don't feel like he's in amongst there.
I mean, you mentioned it before. He's shown that he can score when he doesn't have those huge midfield numbers, but when he's
so he was hovering around like sort of 40% CBA. Sort of the back half of the year, there was one game he went up to 69, but for the most part, they were sort of 30s and 40s.
Classic.
Even in that last game, I mean, it was against the Kangaroos. He had 11% CBAs, and he had that massive 140 from memory as well. So yeah, he can score. Does that change under Damien Hardwick though, in terms of?
It could change from a team perspective, couldn't it? Gold Coast could go from a team that can score to a team that can't score. So, I mean, that's a wait and see. The benefit. Although you cop the early bye, the benefit that you get from that is that you get to see a practice game and you get to see round zero.
Yeah,
so while you might end up having to cop that, you get more data.
You're going to get a sense of, okay, well, what does this Gold Coast Suns midfield lineup actually look like? Is the system kind of conducive to scoring? Is he taking those lead up marks? Getting ready to enter forward 50, which was where he was getting a lot of his points. Like he had 12 marks in that final game, so he's very good at finding open space and he can collect a lot of the ball. So I think those are things, like we're going to get a good sense of it in round zero.
Yeah, it can be tough if Gold Coast become a tap-on, knock-on, hack-kick kind of team like Richmond were in those days. Can I bring something to your attention as well? Because and I'll fully credit Bales for bringing this to my attention. I hadn't looked at this, but Bales, make sure you go and check out Bales'. Is it still at Bales DT?
On Twitter it is. I think it's Truly Bales HD
Bales
on YouTube.
Of course. So make sure you check out what Bales is doing. But Bales brought this to my attention. Is it the same thing you're looking at?
The run?
The start of the season, and it's not necessarily all about the teams that Flanders plays, but it's definitely to do with the venue. And you can see there's some slippery venues. The ball is going to be strongly moved at some of these venues. Go run through a few of them for us.
Well, so he's got Heritage. So round zero, he's at Heritage Bank, which is Gold Coast.
It's a night game.
No, round zero is an afternoon game. Round one is a night game.
Okay.
Yeah, so round one is a night game at Gold Coast. Then he goes to Mars, which we know what that does and the wind and everything down there.
It's so fucking far away. Imagine playing on Mars, mate.
Yeah, the gravity, mate.
Oh, bro.
It would fuck with you, I reckon.
Ball would never come down. You'd never drop a mark because you'd never fucking hit the ground.
So he plays at Mars. He's then got his bye. Then he goes to Adelaide, that's fine. Back at...
but it's not Amy.
Oh, no, which ground? Adelaide Hills.
Adelaide Hills
it is,
so
actually.
Altitude?
Up in the hills? Beverly Hills or something like that?
I don't fucking know what Adelaide Hills is about.
Heritage Bank Stadium in round 5. I'm just checking if that is another night game. It is.
I mean, Hawthorn as well.
Against Hawthorn.
I mean, he's not probably going to get fingered, but...
No, I think that'll go to Anderson or Took.
Yeah.
SCG, probably not the worst ground for him there. And then Heritage Bank again against... the Eagles. Is that another night one? No, that is the first afternoon game he's got. Gabba, is that a night game?
Toughish scoring.
Toughish score, night game again. So, and then 2 games in a row up at Darwin, TIO Stadium.
And doesn't matter. I mean, those games probably June. I'm not sure in terms of the structure, but doesn't fucking matter. It's hot and slippery up there. No matter what.
So in terms of like uncontested marks, which is it's a fair chunk of his game. He can tackle and stuff that as well. So I don't think it's going to completely demolish him, but it just does take a little bit of that ceiling off, I would say.
Yeah.
So in terms of, and you brought this to my attention, and I was like, holy shit, that is actually not the best run in terms of stadiums. That's definitely something that I think you can factor in. Also, the fact that he's got that round 3 bye. So
really interesting. And again, huge shout out to Bales because it wasn't something that I was on my radar before he mentioned it.
Yeah. So and he's not cheap as well. Like what is he? 809,000. So he's got a price at around that 90 mark or 89.6. So. Look, I think he could definitely, if I was projecting the averages, I almost could see an argument to say he's F1. But he's not cheap, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, if he didn't have the back end of the year, we would not be talking about him, but it would be nice if he stayed cheap for the start of this 100%. Year, wouldn't it?
What are you doing with Flanders? Is he in the Oxongs at the moment?
He's at the Oxongs at the minute, and he's on turf. He's not lurking. He's not droning from the car.
So do you have Flanders and Macrae, or Flanders instead of Macrae?
I have Macrae snuck onto the field.
Ooh, so you got both.
Okay. Have a look at this bad boy.
Oh, the old 0K remaining salary. That's got to be a sign.
This is the Hilux winning team, I'd imagine.
I think so.
If you end up on 0K, it's got to say something.
I think that's at least worth something. We'll give him one of these ones at this stage.
Wow, he's very nice.
But again, a bit of a preseason watch. Very much will depend on what happens in that round 0 match as well. Just a reminder before we go on to this next few guys, very exciting forward line coming up, guys. But make sure you give a big old thumbs up to this video if you're watching on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. We're still on the quest for 2,000 subscribers, so help us out in our journey there. And if you are listening over onto the audios, give us a 5-star rating and review. I believe last time I checked, we had about 60 reviews over on Apple Podcasts. If we could get to 100 reviews, I reckon we could easily do that this season. I know there's more than that of you guys who listen to us. So if you haven't, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating review. Drop your comments. Let us know what you think about the podcast. And we would very much appreciate it. All right. We're going back to the Bulldogs territory. Next player, little helmet, little potato, some call him, Caleb Daniel. You traded him in at points last season.
Well, I traded him in, but I didn't realise that when I traded him in, his points would directly correlate with height. Because it was just fucking, it was down, like fucking Coles.
Scores are down.
Coles down?
Yeah.
So I have too many scars to speak on him. What do you think of Caleb?
He's a tricky one. Early reports suggest that he's training in the midfield group. I think I'd prefer for him to play off half-back in terms of a fantasy scoring point of view.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's a guy that really gets in there and, holds his score up with tackles.
They have so many good midfielders that are scoring points.
I
know historically they've been a team that has been able to share so many points.
Yes.
But at a certain point, it's not going to be sustainable. I don't think. Like Bont, we're expecting to be.
Well, Bont was right up there in terms of tackles last year, and maybe that coincided with someone like Caleb Daniel being in there who doesn't tackle quite as much. That Bont had to do a bit more of that, which led to his scoring increasing. But yeah, I think he's a bit too up and down for me to lock in. I'm certainly not dismissing it at this stage, but like last year, he had a game of 39 in there. Several games at the start of the year where he's below 80. He had a few ceiling games with his highest score of the season last year against Geelong with 136. So still a little bit of ceiling there, but as I'm sure you might have heard as well, that second round of the season, he does come up against his favourite ground of the year, and that is at Mars Stadium, where he's famously or infamously scored a 20-point game before in a full game. So
that's tough. Literally went missing.
Yeah, if you have a premium score 20 in round 2,
that's almost curtains.
That's elite team kind of shit right there. You definitely don't want that, and we know he's capable of such a score. So I find it tough. He's never really trained with Mitchman and the boys at the moment. If I'm going to Bulldog, I am going with that Jack Macrae pick because I think there's more upside. The early buy, the lack of no early buy is it's something, but the upside probably just isn't there for me to start him, I don't think. And I like all these guys to have a little bit of upside. It kind of just feels like an 80s, maybe he gets to 90 kind of guy, but he's pretty much priced there already.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
All right, let's move on to the next guy here. And it's been a few seasons since we've seriously talked about this player as a fantasy option, but our guy right here, Dustin Martin, comes in at the very pointy end of the forward rankings as an option. Had a really underrated good season last year and comes in priced at an average of 812,000. Kicks off the season against Carlton, first game of our AFL Fantasy season. Can we start Dusty?
My heart says yes, but my head says no. I don't. He averaged similar to what Macrae did over the course of the season. And if you're going to pick Martin or Macrae, you're probably picking Macrae because at least we've seen. I mean, there was one recently. 2017 for Dusty was huge, but other than that, we've seen that Macrae can be that sort of piggish player. So as much as I love Dusty, he's just not one that's popped up on the radar. I think that he's priced at 90, and I'd expect him to give you 90. He
had 18% CBAs last season.
So you think
that seems very low to me?
It does seem low. He likes to just take himself forward, but I don't even know whether he likes playing in the midfield.
Yeah, I think he's over that.
He goes and sees a small kid up forward and goes, "I'll match up on you, thanks." But I still, if you're Dusty and you've achieved it all, new coach comes in. He's what 32?
I want to say
maybe.
Let me look it up. I got it here.
Hold up.
So he's 32.
What do you think is Dusty's mentality? If Richmond are not going to be good, do you think he just goes out to say, I'm going to fill my boots and just touch as many times as I can? Or do you think he plays a very specific role where he shoots out a contest and runs forward again? Because that's what impacts his scoring is he's an impact player primarily. do you think you can see another massive season from him? Or
It'll be very tough. I don't think you can start with him personally. Again, he's got that early round bye. It wouldn't shock me if by the end of the season he's in the top 6 forwards. I think there's a very big part of Dusty's game which is mental and his like kind of where is his mental space and like how much is he enjoying his footy. I think that's a big thing for him.
Fair.
And maybe with the pressure off the Tigers this season, like there's no great expectations on them. He's got a little bit more freedom to play, his best footy, but at the same time, like he is 32, so that already rules him out in my team for my rules. But like I said, at the end of the year, he's a top 6 forward, and we're trading him in as a premium. I think that is not out of the realm of possibility, but I don't think he's a value pick, so I'm not going to start him, especially because of the fact he's got that round 6 bye. So yeah, he pretty much rules him out for me.
I mean, from a Richmond perspective, hopefully this year he's dusting off the cobwebs and he's back to his 2017 ways.
What? We'll move on.
That was good.
Dusting off the cobwebs. Oh my gosh. All right, let's go on to the next guy here who is one of my favourite players and a player who I recently just drafted in a keeper league. Very excited to have him for my team for the next 8 to 10 years.
You were such a sweaty on that keeper league. That laptop's glued to you.
Right into it. But Dylan Moore, who I was hot on last year, but I was also very much, okay, he's got to have the role. And he didn't have the role. However, he still is a fucking gun. And he averaged nearly 90 points with next to no CBAs, fewer than the season before. He's still super young in a team where, like as a pure forward to average nearly 90 points in a team that didn't, wasn't super competitive in Hawthorn. They chipped it around the back line a whole lot and he still gets to 90. Like there's something to this man. And there's a Will Day injury. There's the acquisition of a Ginnivan. They've also drafted, I think, is it Nick Watson, who's supposed to be a good small forward there, that he might get some early games. Is there a possibility, Luke, that we see Dylan Moore into the midfield? Or even if he doesn't, is there a possibility that with Hawthorn just getting better, that he has a little bit of upside in his scoring ability with no early bye?
The answer to both questions for me is I don't know. But is it something that I want to be looking absolutely close at? Yes. So
if pre-season watch kind of thing.
Yeah, for me, if he in their practice game is playing midfield time, and maybe I'd have to hear something from the coach. I'd have to hear something come out of Hawthorn. Hey, we want to explore more, giving more midfield time. Then I feel like I have to jump on this.
Yeah.
Like I don't know whether you can't. The guy, you've said this before actually. He kind of reminds you of like that Dunkley mold. Like
a bit of a Dunkley, a bit of a Toby Green. I also see a little bit as well, which is again on the flip side maybe a bad thing that he's such a good forward that you just can't afford to take him from that forward line and put him in your midfield.
Like you said, the ball didn't spend time in the forward line.
He does roam all over the ground. Yeah. Like he kind of has that license to just go wherever he needs to be.
Yeah.
And
the ceiling scores there too. I mean, for a guy that, like you said, is effectively 0 CBA time. There's a 132, there's a 126, there's a 127. Like those are good scores for a guy that has to go and hunt the footy. He's not, starting at the contest every time. So
yeah,
I mean,
100%.
I feel like there's a lot to be said about Moore as a starting pick if we see something that suggests that he's going to get more midfield time.
He's also a guy that I don't think will burn you all that much in terms of he's got a pretty high floor. He's only gone under 70, 3 times this last season. And again, with the fact that he's done that with no CBAs is pretty incredible. He's had a higher ceiling cadence than someone like a Caleb Daniel. Like he's gone over tons more than Caleb Daniel did. He's gone over that 120 mark 3 times, which is more than a player like Caleb Daniel did with an inside mid-roll. So yeah, I think if I'm comparing those two players in a similar price point, I am fading Daniel and going with Dylan Moore. He's younger, 24 years old, and I do think that Hawthorn will look to be a bit more aggressive in attacking this season, which might help a player like him out. I still think that you will need to see a little bit of a midfield role to feel confident starting him. Much like a Dusty, if he ends up being a top 6 forward at the end of the season, I won't be shocked. But I don't know if I can back him without that role to be an underpriced guy to start in my fantasy side despite having no early round bye. So that's kind of where I sit with Dylan Moore. So for now, he is unfortunately one of these ones.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
until I see something different.
We said it off the top, but I mean, with every player we've talked about so far, it's like wait and see.
It's a wait and see.
Watch your coach, watch preseason games. So we're not saying anything conclusive, but I guess it's just food for thought, isn't it? It's just, continue the discussion.
One more player that we're going to talk about today, and he is in the premium podcast for a reason. Some people might consider him a mid-pricer, but I think if you're starting with Taylor Adams, you're starting with him as the idea of he is going to be a player that is, in your opinion, a top 6 forward. He's under 700k, but only just 691,000. He has the early round bye in round 5, I want to say, and moves over to the new club in in Sydney. Is he someone that we are expecting to just move back into a full-time midfield role?
Yeah.
And if he is in that role, what can we see him average to be worthy of a starting pick? Because he is a very popular player in our forward line.
Definitely. This is an interesting one because he's obviously moved to Sydney for more midfield opportunity, but he's still a guy that averaged 40% CBAs at Collingwood. So
he wasn't completely out of it, yeah.
So what I guess he's shown to us there is he needs to be the 80% guy to score like he did in years gone by. But I think he's had years of like almost 110.
He went 110, I think, so, a little while ago, yes.
What, like, where does he fit in that Sydney midfield? If they've put a trade together and he's requested, hey, I want more midfield time, and Sydney's going, yep, come on in, we'll give you more midfield time. To me, that's as good as done. He's getting more midfield time. But
how much is more? Like,
exactly. I think if he goes to 60%, I don't think that's enough for us to
wear that buy. Because if it wasn't for the buy, he probably has some upside, and you can start him. And if he goes up 10 points, that's probably enough. But you're missing a game early in the season.
Well, for me as well is like you bring in a guy, you tell him he's going to get more midfield time. That's all well and good, but Sydney have gun midfielders, and they've got young guys as well. So Taylor Adams is, 32, 33?
He's 30.
He's 30. Sorry, Taylor. Like he listens.
Taylor, I'm sorry, mate.
Yeah. But so Luke Parker is Sydney's highest CBA getter, 78%.
Yep.
What do we think? Parker's suddenly just going to be devoid of CBAs, and Taylor Adams just going to be the number one guy. Then you've got Rowbottom, Warner, Goulden.
You have to think Warner's going to take another step forward as well, right? Like he's kind of their future. Like I would have to think that he's going from 55 and that's 53, sorry, and that's not going down. That has to be going up, in my opinion.
In the last 5 or so rounds, like Papley, or even more so 7 or 8 rounds, Papley had huge CBAs. Yep. He was up around 50%. Like Callum Mills is going to spend at least a little bit of time
once
in there.
He's back, yeah.
Sheldrick is a guy that popped for them. I mean, Heaney, I wish Heaney spent more time in the midfield, but there's all these guys that I think if I'm Sydney, I'm not going, hey, 30-year-old Taylor Adams, who's, unless they think, hey, our premiership run is bang, we're in it, let's just lock this guy in. I can
see the appeal. Obviously, I think I've heard somewhere, I can't remember exactly where, but Sydney was a team that was not the best in terms of contested possessions, and Taylor Adams is good at that. That's his bread and butter. So that it's kind of like that Tom Mitchell acquisition for Collingwood the previous year, where they've identified a need of this is a guy that's going to help us with a weakness in our team. But just like Tom Mitchell last year, that doesn't always equate to fantasy scoring. It might equate to the team doing better. It might equate to him being more valuable to that team than maybe he was at Collingwood, and that might be something that Adams is looking for.
Yeah.
Obviously he wasn't a part of the grand final winning team in Collingwood, and
that would hurt.
And maybe he's looking for a bigger sense of responsibility and value to the team. But again, that might not correlate with scoring fantasy points. So, like you, I'm a little bit hesitant. Now, I'm not ruling him out completely. Again, we're going to have a good look at it in that opening round and see what he can do in games where he. In 2022, he averaged 68% CBAs, averaged 84 points. So averaged 78 in games where he had over 35% CBAs in 2023, so last year. And then it was 2021 that he averaged 103.5 if you take out some of the injury-affected games, and that was in 78% of games. So he has been declining basically every year. Now, the CBAs have been going down.
So he has to be around 80% to give you 100.
I think he's got to be, I think to get 100, he's got to be close to that 75, 80%. And I don't think that that's necessarily what I expect. And if he's like 60, 65%, he's probably at best like a 90s, mid-90s guy. And to wear that early buy, I don't know if it's worth it at this stage.
It is really interesting, isn't it? Because the thing that sways me towards it is there's a guy that outwardly says, I want more midfield time, I want more CBAs, and you go and work a deal. Yeah. That fills me with confidence in terms of CBAs. But like I said, there's so many names. Another name I didn't mention is James Jordan. We've seen highlights of him. CBAs.
He's come in for the same thing.
At training. So this forward line, man, like with everyone, my bloody thought, I'm frazzled.
Yeah, I'm currently don't have him in my team, but he is training with the boys and he has popped in there at times. But like we said, with someone like a Flanders, you're gonna have to really like what you see in that round 0 game. Yeah. And from there, the pieces are going to fall into place, I think.
I guess that's a thing. You cop the early buy, but you get more data. So yes. I do like that.
Yeah, so let us know what you guys think. Are you starting with any of these guys we've talked about today, or are you starting with none of them? Are you going really cheap? That is definitely a play that I think the closer we get to the start of round 1, we will have a better idea about. Drop us down in the comment section if there's anyone we didn't talk about today that you want to discuss and we'll have a chat to you about. Make sure, again, hit that thumbs up, hit that big old subscribe button, and again, if you're listening on audio, go over, give us a 5-star rating and review. And next podcast, we're going to be going through the cheaper forwards, going through the mid-prices, which will be another very fence-sitting episode, I imagine. Until then, guys, we'll see you later. Bye!